I was Lucas, 42, standing on the edge of a dream that could save or shatter me, unaware that one night would rewrite my story forever. A stable job at a marketing firm in Seattle, a salary sufficient to buy a condo, take winter vacations in California, and save a bit for the future. Lauren, my wife, always glowed with pride when telling her friends about her husband, who knows how to provide. Chloe, our 10-year-old daughter, was the light of my life, with a smile that melted away all my fatigue. But deep inside me, there was a smoldering fire, a question that kept echoing, is this all I want? I grew up in a family that viewed stability as the ultimate truth. My parents, Mr. and Mrs. Bennett, always took pride in never taking risks. Work hard, hold on to your job, and don't chase pipe dreams, my father would say every time I mentioned the idea of starting my own business. My mother was gentler, but her eyes always betrayed a sense of worry, because she'd seen my uncle's failed venture tear our family apart years ago. Caleb, my younger brother, was their ideal model, an honors graduate, a stable job at an accounting firm, and now the fiancé of Rachel, a skilled architect. I love Caleb, but sometimes his perfection made me feel like a faint shadow in comparison. 5 years ago, I decided to listen to the fire within me. I quit my job, poured all my savings, and even took out a bank loan to start a small software company. My idea was an app to connect local artisans with nearby customers. Simple, but full of potential, or so I believed. Lauren supported me, though she was anxious. "Are you sure, Lucas?" she asked, her eyes reflecting both faith and fear. I nodded, squeezing her hand. "This is our chance." But that chance never came. The company failed. The market was too harsh, the competitors were stronger, and I lacked experience. I'd tried my hardest, working 20 hours a day, making desperate calls to investors, but every door slammed shut. Our savings dried up, and the loan became a crushing burden. Lauren began to grow distant. Arguments erupted, small at first, then increasingly heated. "You promised to take care of this family," she shouted one night as bills piled up on the table. I didn't respond because she was right. I had failed. In the end, Lauren separated from me, taking Chloe to her mother's house. "I need time, Lucas," she said, her voice weary. Chloe hugged me before leaving, whispering, "I love you, Dad." I smiled, but my heart shattered. I moved into a small apartment with peeling paint and a damp smell. Every night, I sat on an old chair staring at my laptop screen, trying to find a way to revive the company, but all I met was disappointment. I didn't just lose money, I lost my family. My parents didn't miss the chance to remind me of my failure. "You should have listened to me," my father said over the phone, his voice ice cold. "Now look at you. Nothing left." My mother sighed because she feared I'd end up like her brother, broken and forgotten. They compared me to Caleb, who always did everything right. "Why can't you be like your brother?" my mother asked, and I stayed silent because I didn't know how to answer. I started avoiding my family. For gatherings, I made excuses about being busy. For phone calls, I let the ringer go unanswered, but I couldn't avoid them forever. One day, Caleb called, his voice brimming with excitement. "Bro, I'm getting married. Rachel said yes. I want you at the wedding. You have to come." "Okay." I forced a smile, though my heart ached. Caleb was always like that, pulling me into his dazzling world even though he knew our parents had already written me off. "Congrats, man," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I'll be there, Caleb. Wouldn't miss your big day." He laughed heartily, talking about Rachel and their wedding plans, and I listened, nodding along while hiding that I'd found a secret investor who might save my app. After the call, I sat in my dimly lit apartment, the streetlight filtering through the window, casting shadows on the peeling walls. A wedding, a simple word, but to me, it felt like a doorway to an arena. My family would be there with their judgmental stares and whispers behind my back. "Lucas, the failure," they'd say, as they had so many times before. I pictured myself standing in the reception hall wearing an old, worn-out suit, forcing a smile to mask my shame. But then I thought of Caleb, my little brother, the only one in the family who never looked at me with pity. I owed him. The next morning, the phone rang again. This time, it was my father. His voice was cold, like he was reading a verdict. "Lucas, you don't need to come to the wedding." I froze, my hand tightening around the phone. The bride's family is full of respectable people, he continued. If you show up, you'll only embarrass us. My mother chimed in, her voice softer but sharp as a blade. You understand what we mean, don't you? Don't put Caleb in an awkward position. I wanted to scream, to ask why they always saw me as a burden, but all I said was yes. Their words, brief as they were, cut deep into my self-respect. I sank into the chair, my hands trembling, staring out the window. Suddenly, a memory pulled me back to 5 years ago, the day I stood in my parents' living room, facing the entire family in a meeting as tense as a taut wire. I had just announced that I was quitting my job at the marketing firm to start a software company. The room fell silent for a moment, then erupted. You've lost your mind, Lucas, my father roared, his face flushed with anger. A stable job, good pay, and you're throwing it away for some pipe dream. My mother sat nearby, gripping her chair tightly, her eyes brimming with tears. Think about Lauren, about Chloe, she said, her voice trembling. Do you want them to suffer because of you? Caleb, who had just started at the accounting firm, stood with his arms crossed, shaking his head. Bro, I know you want to do something big, but this is too risky. Listen to Mom and Dad. His tone was gentle, but his eyes, revealing he'd secretly invested in a rival app, hurt more than my father's reprimands. I stood there, my heart pounding, trying to keep my voice calm. I believe in this idea, I said. I don't want to live my whole life just playing it safe. My father cut me off, pointing at me. Safety is what keeps this family standing. If you want to ruin everything, don't drag us down with you. My mother cried. Caleb stayed silent, and I felt like a traitor. Lauren held my hand, whispering, I believe in you. But even in her eyes, I saw fear. The room felt suffocating, and Caleb's betrayal lingered like a shadow. I left carrying my father's warning, you'll regret this. And when the company failed, his words became a curse, weighing on me every night. Those painful memories made me want to give up. If I didn't go, I could avoid the stares, the snide remarks. But not going would mean missing the chance to prove I was still part of the family, even if they didn't want to acknowledge it. And Chloe, my daughter, would be there. Lauren had agreed to let Chloe come with me. I pictured her smile, the way she'd grab my hand and call out, Daddy, in the crowd. I couldn't let Chloe see her father running away. I stood up, opened the closet, and pulled out my suit. It was old, but it still fit. I smoothed out the wrinkles, looking at myself in the mirror. My face was gaunt, my eyes tired, but I told myself I'm going for Caleb, for Chloe, and for me. I didn't know what the wedding would bring, but I knew I couldn't keep living like a ghost. I took a deep breath, stepped out of the apartment, carrying a fragile sliver of hope that maybe, just maybe, I could find my place again. On the day of the wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, adjusting my tie for the 12th time. The old suit had worn shoulders, but I'd done my best to polish my shoes to look more presentable. Chloe stood beside me, twirling in her blue dress, beaming with a radiant smile. Dad, you look so handsome, she said, and I leaned down to kiss her forehead, my heart feeling a little lighter. Chloe was the reason I was here, the light in my darkest days. You're the prettiest one, I replied, taking her hand as we stepped out of the apartment. The wedding venue on the outskirts of Seattle was more glamorous than I'd imagined. Chandeliers sparkled, fresh flowers lined the walkways, and soft music floated from a live orchestra. I felt out of place from the moment I stepped inside. The guests, dressed in elegant suits and evening gowns, chatted animatedly while I just wanted to shrink away. I led Chloe to a table at the back of the hall, near the exit where we'd draw less attention. Dad, why aren't we sitting closer to Uncle Caleb? Chloe asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. It's more comfortable here for us, I said, forcing a smile. In truth, I just wanted to avoid my parents' gazes and those of anyone who knew the story of Lucas the failure. I sat down, pulling out a chair for Chloe. She was thrilled, looking around excitedly, pointing at the clusters of balloons and the towering wedding cake. Dad, will Uncle Caleb have another party after the wedding? She asked, and I chuckled momentarily, forgetting my anxiety. Probably not, but I'll get you some ice cream after the reception, deal? Chloe nodded, grabbing my hand, and I felt a touch of warmth in the unfamiliar. From a distance, I watched Caleb. My little brother stood in the middle of the crowd, grinning brightly next to Rachel, who looked like she'd stepped out of a magazine. My parents were nearby, proudly boasting about their golden child. I caught my mother glancing my way, her eyes flickering with a hint of displeasure before she turned away as if I didn't exist. I lowered my head, pretending to adjust the napkin, knowing my secret investor was in this room, watching me. I'm only here for Caleb, I told myself. Stay, don't cause a scene, and leave. Chloe started talking about school, the neighbor's cat, and I listened, nodding along as if the world beyond our table didn't exist. But every loud laugh from the crowd, every fleeting glance in my direction made me shrink further. I didn't belong here. No longer the Lucas Bennett of old, the one who confidently shook hands with business partners and told jokes at parties. I was just a failure trying not to break anything else. The wedding went smoothly, at least for me, until Caleb stepped onto the stage and picked up the microphone. He looked radiant in his tuxedo, his confident smile as bright as ever. "Thank you all for coming," Caleb began, his voice resonating through the hall. The guests clapped, and I joined in, though my hands trembled slightly. I just wanted this speech to end quickly so Chloe and I could slip away unnoticed. But then Caleb looked directly at me. "There's someone special I'd like to invite up here," he said, and my heart clenched. "My brother, Lucas Bennett." The hall erupted in applause, but I wished the floor would swallow me whole. Chloe, sitting beside me, her eyes lighting up, tugged at my hand. "Dad, Uncle Caleb's calling you." I took a deep breath, looking at her. "Do you want to come up with me?" I asked, my voice shaky. Chloe nodded immediately, her smile radiant. "Yes." She gripped my hand tightly, and I felt a flicker of courage stir within me. With Chloe by my side, I walked to the stage, each step heavy but steadier thanks to her small hand in mine. There we stood, I in my worn-out suit, Chloe in her blue dress, still holding my hand tightly. The guests clapped, some smiling at Chloe, and for a fleeting moment, I thought everything might be okay. Caleb clapped me on the shoulder, but his smile no longer felt warm. "Everyone, this is my brother, the great entrepreneur," he emphasized the word, and the first ripple of laughter spread through the crowd. I tightened my grip on Chloe's hand, feeling the ground shift beneath me. "Lucas quit a stable job to chase a pipe dream," Caleb continued, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "And the result? Bankruptcy. Lost money. Lost his family. Right, bro?" The hall laughed louder. I glanced at my parents, hoping for a supportive look. But my mother only smirked, and my father nodded, saying loud enough for those nearby to hear, "Serves him right for not listening." The laughter swelled again, each chuckle like a knife slicing into my heart. I looked down at Chloe. She stood close to me, her eyes wide and confused. "Dad, why are they laughing?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The greatest pain wasn't Caleb's mockery or my parents' smug satisfaction. It was seeing my daughter hurt. Chloe gripped my hand tighter as if trying to protect me, but it was I who needed to protect her. I wanted to scoop her up to run from this place, but I stood still, clinging to what little dignity I had left. I didn't want her to think her father was weak. Caleb went on, turning my mistakes into a punchline. "Look at him dragging Chloe up here, probably hoping for some pity." He laughed, and the crowd laughed with him. Chloe lowered her head, her hair hiding her face, and I felt my heart shatter. I placed a hand on her shoulder, whispering, "I'm okay. Don't be scared." But I wasn't okay. I was powerless, standing under the spotlight amidst the laughter with my little girl beside me, both of us exposed to the world's judgment. Then, suddenly, the sound of a chair scraping against the floor cut through the laughter. I looked up and saw Rachel standing. The bride, resplendent in her white gown, strode quickly toward the stage, her eyes blazing. The hall fell silent. Caleb stopped speaking, his smile freezing on his face. Rachel snatched the microphone from his hand with a decisive motion that startled a few guests. She looked straight at me, then at Chloe, and in her eyes I saw not pity, but a fierce fire. "Lucas," Rachel said, her voice ringing out clear and resolute, "I've never told you this, but your courage has inspired me." The hall was so quiet you could hear someone's sharp intake of breath. I stood frozen, unable to believe my ears. Chloe looked up, her eyes wide, gazing at Rachel as if she were a superhero. "He dared to give up safety to chase his dream," Rachel continued, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. He failed, yes, but he didn't give up. That's something not everyone can do. She turned to Caleb, her gaze sharp as a blade. And you, Caleb, you turned our wedding into a stage to mock your own brother. Do you think that makes you stronger? Caleb opened his mouth, but no words came out. Rachel didn't stop. She looked toward my parents, who sat rigid at the front table, and Mr. and Mrs. Bennett. I once respected you, but today I see clearly that you value appearances over family, laughing at your own son's pain. Does that make you proud? My mother lowered her head. My father's face flushed, but neither dared to respond. Rachel turned back to me, her voice softening. Lucas, you're not a failure. You're someone who dared to live true to himself. And Chloe, she knelt down, smiling at my daughter, you have an incredible father. Chloe smiled, though her eyes were still wet, and I felt a wave of warmth seep into my cold heart. Rachel set the microphone down, her gaze sweeping the hall. I can't go forward with a family that disrespects its own, she said, her voice unwavering. Then she stepped down, her white dress billowing, leaving the stage in a stunned Caleb behind, the hall enveloped in a deathly silence. I watched her go, my heart flooded with a mix of awe, relief, and a spark of defiance I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long while, I felt I wasn't alone. Rachel left the stage, her figure in the white gown disappearing through the doors of the hall. Her footsteps echoed decisively, like an irrevocable declaration. I stood there clutching Chloe's hand, feeling as though I'd been pulled back from the edge of an abyss. My daughter looked up at me, her eyes sparkling, and whispered, Aunt Rachel was right, Dad. You're amazing. I smiled, though my throat tightened. Chloe's words were a flame warming my heart amidst the storm. The hall sank into an awkward silence. The laughter from moments ago had died, replaced by averted gazes and hands nervously fidgeting with napkins. Caleb stood frozen on the stage, the microphone hanging limply in his hand, his confident smile gone. He stared after Rachel, his face pale, then suddenly bolted down, chasing after her. Rachel, wait! His voice rang out, lost in the deathly quiet. I saw Rachel pause at the threshold, turning back. Caleb reached for her arm, his voice pleading, Babe, I'm sorry, I was just joking. But Rachel yanked her arm away, her eyes icy. Joking? You humiliated your own brother in front of everyone, Caleb. That's not a joke, it's cruelty. She stepped back, her white dress billowing. I can't marry someone like you. Then she turned and walked away, leaving Caleb standing there, his hands falling to his sides like a shattered statue. The hall remained silent. My parents sat at the front table, their faces flushed. My mother bowed her head, her hands gripping the tablecloth, while my father stared straight ahead. But the smugness in his eyes was gone. The guests around them whispered, some shaking their heads. Why would he do that to his brother? What kind of wedding is this? I caught fragments of their murmurs. No one laughed anymore. No one dared meet my eyes. I took Chloe's hand and led her off the stage. With each step, I felt the guests' eyes following us. But this time, it wasn't mockery. Some nodded at me, a subtle gesture as if seeing me in a new light. In that moment, I was no longer the failure. I was Lucas, the man who stood tall, even when the world turned its back on him. As we reached the exit, an older woman, likely a friend of Rachel, stopped me. You're a strong man, she said, her voice sincere. Don't let them make you think otherwise. I smiled, thanking her, but in my heart I knew the most important thing was Chloe. She held my hand, no longer trembling, and I realized I didn't need the approval of the room. I just needed my daughter to see that her father didn't crumble. The doors of the reception hall closed behind us, but their echo seemed to follow me and Chloe all the way to the car. She was quiet, unlike her earlier chatter, but her small hand still clung tightly to mine. Dad, will Aunt Rachel be okay? Chloe asked, her voice tinged with worry. I stopped, knelt down, and looked into her eyes. She's strong, Chloe, and I believe good things will come to her. Chloe smiled, wrapping her arms around me, and I felt a piece of my heart mend. The next day, Seattle buzzed with news of the canceled wedding. Caleb posted a status on social media, trying to justify it as an unintentional joke, but no one bought it. The comments piled up, condemning him as heartless. A secretly recorded video of Rachel's speech spread like wildfire, racking up tens of thousands of views. In it, her voice rang out steadfastly, defending me and Chloe, condemning Caleb and my parents. The internet rallied behind her, sharing my story, the man who dared to dream big, even if he failed. I read the comments, my heart a mix of shock and a quiet pride I hadn't allowed myself to feel before. For the first time, I wasn't just the failure. A few days later, my parents called, their voices full of blame. "You ruined your brother's wedding," my father said, as if I were the one who'd grabbed the microphone to mock someone. "Why didn't you just stay quiet and take it?" my mother added, her tone bitter. I took a deep breath, refusing to let their words drag me down for the first time. "I'm done being the family's punching bag," I said, my voice calm but firm. "If you can't respect me, don't call again." I hung up, my heart pounding, but not with fear. I felt free. One morning, I received a short email from Rachel. "Lucas, you're an inspiration. Don't give up. Chloe needs you, and the world needs people like you." I read it over and over, tears silently falling. Rachel hadn't just saved me from humiliation that night. She'd shown me my own worth. I replied, thanking her and promising not to give up. Though she and Caleb had parted ways, I knew Rachel would find the happiness her strong heart deserved. Rachel's video didn't just change how people saw me, it breathed life into my small software company. In the days following the wedding, my phone started ringing. An investor from Seattle reached out, saying they were impressed by my story. It was the same investor I'd met secretly, now ready to fund my app after seeing my resilience. I could hardly believe it. Then 3 more investors called. They didn't just see potential in my app, they saw value in my perseverance. I poured everything into restarting the project. Sleepless nights, tense meetings, but this time I wasn't alone. My small team, the ones who'd stayed even when I couldn't pay them, now worked with renewed passion. "Boss, we're going to make it," one employee said, and I nodded, believing for the first time that it could happen. 8 months later, we launched a new version of the app, connecting local artisans with nearby customers more effectively than ever. Revenue started to climb, slowly but steadily. A feature in the Seattle Times called me the entrepreneur who overcame adversity. I read it and laughed, not out of pride, but because I never thought I'd be seen that way. This small success brought Chloe closer to me. Lauren, though still keeping her distance, agreed to let me have Chloe more weekends. I fixed up the apartment, buying a small bed for her. In the evenings, we ate burgers, watched cartoons, and I told her about the company. "Dad, you make an app to help people, right?" she asked, and I nodded, my heart warming. Chloe was my greatest motivation, and I wanted her to be proud of her father. As for my parents, after that fateful wedding night, their lives became strained under the scrutiny of those around them. The Bennetts, once proud of their flawless family image, became the talk of Seattle. Old friends, neighbors, even distant relatives whispered about that shameful night. Lauren told me my mother stopped hosting her usual monthly gatherings. She shut herself in the house, avoiding prying eyes. My father, for whom appearances were everything, grew more irritable. He spoke little, muttering about the ruined wedding whenever someone mentioned Caleb. Caleb took the hardest hit. After his failed attempt to justify himself online, he deleted his social media accounts. But the stain wasn't easily erased. Rachel's video spread everywhere, shattering the golden boy image Caleb had cultivated. Colleagues at his accounting firm began to distance themselves, some bluntly calling him lacking character. Major clients pulled contracts, and Caleb was demoted, a heavy blow for someone who'd always basked in the spotlight. I heard he tried reaching out to Rachel, sending dozens of apologetic messages, but she didn't respond. Rachel moved to Boston, starting a new life, and Caleb, for the first time, had to face the consequences of his actions. I didn't see them, didn't call, didn't visit, not out of anger, but because I needed to protect Chloe and myself. But sometimes, sitting alone in my apartment, I thought of Caleb. He was once my little brother, and I wondered if he'd ever confess his role in sabotaging my first app. I didn't want him to suffer, but I knew he could only grow by facing his mistakes. As for my parents, I hoped one day they'd realize family is more precious than pride. But I didn't hold my breath. I'd learned to live without their approval. Their lives were hard, but not because of me, because of their own choices. They'd built a world on comparison and judgment, and when that world collapsed, they didn't know what to do. I didn't take joy in it, but I no longer saw myself as the loser. I had Chloe, my company, and myself, enough to keep moving forward. One morning, Chloe and I sat eating breakfast in the small apartment. She took a bite of pancakes, her eyes lighting up as she talked about a drawing assignment at school. "I drew you, Dad, standing on a mountain because you're strong," she said, and I laughed, but my heart swelled with warmth. "I'm proud because you didn't give up," she added, and I had to turn away, pretending to wipe my hands to hide a tear. In that moment, I realized my worth wasn't in my family's approval, but in Chloe's love and what I'd overcome. My story isn't a fairy tale. The app thrives, but debts linger. Lauren and I talk, but the past still stings. Caleb remains distant, his silence louder than his mockery ever was. Yet every night, I tuck Chloe in, her smile my anchor. I've learned courage isn't winning, it's choosing to stand, scars and all, for those who believe in you. Rachel gave me that truth, Chloe gives me purpose, and I carry their faith, knowing some battles are won simply by not giving up.